Um, Two big movies opening this weekend, I believe. The Barbie movie and Oppenheimer, about the theoretical physicist who was instrumental primarily in developing the nuclear bomb. I've been reading some things about both movies that are coming out and how both of them are tandem destroyers of civilization on this planet. We are in what is called the Anthropocene era. That is an era of global, Earth history, where human beings are destroying everything. But I've been intrigued by Oppenheimer over the years, ever since, I don't know, maybe I was in 5th or 6th grade and became aware of what it was that J. Robert Oppenheimer had brought to human existence, nuclear weapons. And it always fascinated me. I don't know about little girls, but if you're a little boy, you, at some point in your growing up, you become fascinated with destruction. You ever notice that? Huh? Are you male? Did you have the same thing? I used to draw little pictures of F-86 Sabre jets blasting the Red Chinese out of the sky, shit like that. But we do. Little boys become fascinated with destruction. Maybe little girls, don't know. I've always been a little boy. But anyway, Oppenheimer explained several times how when he witnessed the first nuclear explosion, he recited a line from the Bhagavad Gita. That is the line, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And in doing some research, I found out that Oppenheimer, although he was born a Jew, he became fascinated with Hinduism. As a matter of fact, he studied the Sanskrit language to the point where he could read the Bhagavad Gita in the original language, well, at least in Sanskrit. And he was completely taken in by that religion. And how much do we know, you and me, you and I? How much do we know about Hinduism? Probably not very damn much. But no matter how little we know about Hinduism, that line from one of its holy scriptures is available to anybody who has grown up since, or been born, I guess, since 1945. It's there for us. "Now I become death, the destroyer of worlds." That is part of the legacy of Oppenheimer, who, without argument, left an outsized mark on history for his role in the crucial role, primary role in the Manhattan Project that, during World War II produced the first nuclear weapons. And now, and for some time, he's remembered as the, quote, father of the atomic bomb, end quote. Now, he had a tragic life. I guess you're aware of some of this. He died in his 60s. He died of throat cancer because he was a chain smoker. He had a child, a daughter, maybe, who, or maybe it was a former wife, but one of his close relatives hanged herself not too long after Oppenheimer died. He did not have what by any measure would have been considered a happy or pleasant life. And on July 16th, 1945, that was the date of the test in the New Mexican desert that proved that the theoretical math and the experiments that up to that point had been done in laboratories would actually work. That is, that a nuclear explosion could wreak a kind of destruction previously only thought about in visions of the end of the world. And there we were. In 1965, Oppenheimer said, quote, "We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed, a few people cried, most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." But what is death, as the Bhagavad Gita sees it? That is a question that I guess Oppenheimer was fascinated with, because death is a repeating circumstance in Hinduism, with reincarnation and so on and so forth. In an interview with Wired, according to what I have here, a Sanskrit scholar, Stephen Thompson, explains that in the original Sanskrit, the word that Oppenheimer uses as death refers to, quote, literally the world-destroying time. And that means that irrespective of what Arjuna, who was the prince that Vishnu was talking to, that irrespective of what the prince does, Arjuna, everything is in the hands of the divine. Hindus are very religious, right? Oppenheimer would have learned all this, of course, while teaching in the 1930s at UC Berkeley. And that's where he learned Sanskrit, according to what I've read, and read the Gita in its original. And this created in Oppenheimer, according to one of his colleagues at the time, quote, a feeling of mystery of the universe that surrounded him like a fog, end quote. Now, why am I talking about this? I guess because we are faced with 2 or 3 major catastrophic events all of a sudden. I'm sure you're aware of it. No matter how much we try to deny and avoid thinking about it or talking about it, except on this crazy little podcast, I guess. I mean, I don't know what everybody else is talking about in the podcast world. I really don't. But global warming and nuclear weapons, to me, is the big X that some supernatural force is going to click on, up in the right-hand part of the screen. Click, boom, gone. And I guess I'm still stuck in what I said a moment ago, that young boy thing, the fascination, although it's a horrifying fascination, with death and destruction. And I'm sure this happens to you too. I keep getting these little messages, these little incidents of horror that's loose on this planet. What's the latest? Was it Border Patrol on our southern border? It's been revealed now that children and little babies in the arms of mothers were pushed back into the Rio Grande River when they tried to step on American soil. In other words, they were killed, they were drowned. I mean, what kind of a human goddamn being does? Come on, Mike. What kind of a human being does that? Well, I was just following orders. Right? I was just following orders. Kill children, kill babies, push them back into the Rio Grande. Jesus Christ. So the screening of this movie, the release of this movie, is going to raise a lot of issues, especially for the people who live downwind of these nuclear explosions. Americans who were the first casualties of the nuclear bomb. They didn't die first, but they were the first casualties. It just took a while for the cancers to develop. But the necessity of our subsequent dropping of not 1, but 2 atomic bombs on Japan is still a matter of debate. I've heard the arguments on both sides. At this point in my life, and earlier, I came down on the side that said, look, it wasn't necessary, because the Russians had invaded Manchuria in the last days of World War II. Manchuria and big chunks of China taking advantage of the decapitation of the Japanese government and military. The dropping of the nuclear weapons, according to one theory, was Truman's way of showing the Russians, hey, don't fuck with us. We have these new weapons, and if you don't back off, we're going to drop them on Moscow and Leningrad and all over your stinking Soviet Union. Who knows? Anyway, Oppenheimer, as you probably know, as he went on through his life, as short as it was, he went to oppose nuclear weapons. And he described himself to President Harry Truman, and Truman was shocked by this, apparently. Oppenheimer described himself as having, quote, blood on my hands, end quote. Yeah, well, in a sense, Dr. Oppenheimer, it was, of course, much worse than that. But in developing his theme about his life and about what he had done, there's a possibility that he could have simply seen himself as a modern-day Prince Arjuna, the one to whom Vishnu was trying to persuade that he should do his duty, and, well, whatever his duty was, wiping out the world. Which Hindu god is it that is dreaming all of this? Is it Vishnu? And when Vishnu wakes up, the world is destroyed. Everything is destroyed. And then Vishnu goes back to sleep and the process begins all over again. See, I don't know that much about Hinduism, although it does fascinate me. I often wonder, I'm sure you do too, about the nature of human beings. If the whole evolutionary idea was for us to reach a point where we would self-destruct. Because God knows we've had 200,000 years to try to perfect our species, or what became our species. And we just keep pushing ourselves over the edge. It's astonishing to me. The war in Ukraine is another example. One of the most intense events that brings about more global warming is war, whether it's our invasion and war crimes in Iraq, or in North Korea, or Vietnam, or Ukraine, or Serbia, wherever warfare occurs, the amount of carbon dioxide and methane and all sorts of poisonous gases that go into the atmosphere. Remember the pictures from Iraq when Saddam Hussein set fire to all the oil wells that he could set fire to. Huge columns of black smoke going into the atmosphere. And in an altered form, they're still there. I mean, but it seems like we are just hell-bent, or whatever the Sanskrit equivalent of hell-bent would be, in bringing an end to everything. Huh? Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.